Hi folks, you're with Tassus at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of accommodation or rental accommodation, and I guess even new housing availability in the Western big cities. As you know, the globalists are demanding, well, they control all the Western governments anyway, but they're demanding all Western governments take in vast numbers of black and brown third world peasants, and this creates if you like, the raw material for a housing and rental shortage, and also pushes up prices. But on top of that, they're allowing offshore investors who are really just laundering their illicit gains, whether it be from drug money or oligarchy money, corrupt practices of one sort or another. They're just laundering their fucking money. So they come and buy up swathes of real estate. I mean, some of these investors own 200, 300, 400 properties each. And this is happening all across the big Western cities, such as Sydney and, London and so on. Now, this is obviously, it's creating an artificial marketplace, because typically real estate and traditionally throughout time, real estate has reflected the purchasing power and capacity of the local population. So if the local population have a certain amount of money to spend, then that's reflected in the house pricing, but no more. Pricing is now being driven by offshore investors, and it's well beyond the reach of most of the local people in most Western countries. And it's probably the biggest contributor, well, not probably, it is the biggest contributor to declines in standard of living. Rents, for example, rents have increased at more than twice the rate of wages over the last 50 years. So in fact, it's close on 3 times. So even if you've got now a double income household and no children, you're still substantially behind the purchasing power that existed 50 years ago. So rental accommodation or even paying a mortgage is chewing up a far greater proportion of the household budget than it was years ago. So, and this is what's causing much of the decline, or most of the decline, in standard living. And now we've got added pressures such as the high price of energy and food and so on. But what got me onto this, and it's a topic that's never been far from my mind really, but I was driving past a place, just down a suburban sort of street, and I saw this very large queue, this large group of people outside a house, and I thought, I wonder what that's all about. And I sort of made a note of the place. It turns out it's a freestanding house in an outer suburban area, but a freestanding house that is up for rent, and they have set inspection times, so that there must have been, as I say, 40, 50 people that are queuing up there, children in tow and so on. Now, for that many people to turn up, it means there's quite a serious shortage of affordable housing. Now, I think given the area and the sort of house, this would have been at the more budget end of the rent, suggesting there's a lot of people existing on tight budgets, and this is about all I can manage. Also, it's in walking distance to things like shops and I think it was a train station. So it means people don't have to have a car, and so they can save on things like filling up the tank and paying car registration, those sorts of things. Now, how did it used to be though? Just sort of going back in time. I remember when I first started renting places, like as a young guy, a teenager at the time, the places to rent was so easy to come by that it was insane. They didn't have inspection times because there just weren't enough people to make it worthwhile. So you would call up the real estate and they would show you the premises, and then you decide there. And I recall that you never paid the asking price for rent. I mean, if the rent was, I'll just use round numbers to illustrate the point. If the rent was $100, you would sort of just look a little bit, yeah, $100 is it? And straight away we can probably do it for 90, and that's so you'd always get money off, or you get the first month free, or we'll give you the first week for free, or those sorts of things. And if you had steady employment and a few bucks in the bank and everything, the place was yours. They'd sign you up on the spot. It was there was no delay or drama, or we'll think about it, and if you meet our high standards, we might let you in. Nothing like that. And that's how easy it was at the time. And if an owner was trying to put up a property for rent, and they wanted, for example, $100 a week, and they couldn't get any bites at that, then they'd reduce it to 90 or 80, and they'd keep on reducing it till they got someone in there. Now they may try and hustle it back up again, later on, but they were driven by market forces. If they weren't the people knocking the door down to rent the place, then the price would be reduced until they got somebody. Now, maybe not every property owner was like that, but there certainly were plenty of them out there, and there was more property available for rent than there were people chasing. Now, that was a little bit different, say, in the super popular areas, some of the inner city areas, particularly an inner city area that was near a beach and near good transport links. That things were a little bit tougher there. But outside of that, it was very easy to pick up places to rent. So, and the further you got away from the desirable areas, you'd even have people calling you back, like estate agents calling you back and saying, look, you came to see such a play. I had to talk to the owner, and we're talking 100, or we're happy to do it for 80. That type of thing. That was again quite common, and I don't recall ever queuing up or needing to queue up, or real estate saying, well, you're the first person who's looked at this place in a month or 3 weeks or something like that. So that was typically how it was. Then mass migration came. So in the late 1990s, across the Western world, and Australia was no different, they really amped up the mass migration, using the absolute grotesque, hideous untruth that there was some massive skill shortage in Australia, and it needed to be addressed by importing hundreds of thousands of illiterate brown and black peasants. I mean, they're really going to solve a skills crisis. Yeah, sure. So now, I guess, given the amount of people coming in, there are a few things to note here, and separating off the offshore investors buying up swathes of property, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But when you get that many people coming from third world countries, they tend to live in communal groups. So they may all work as cleaners or dishwashers or pushing a broom, but collectively, when there's 20 of them living to a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, when they pool all the resources, they can pay a higher rent than just a one-off local family. So they were, by their collective purchasing power, if you will, living 20 to a 2-bedroom apartment, which white people don't do, or the local people don't do. These people do, and so they were able to outprice. And this was exploited by property owners and real estate agents and so on. They would they used to do terrible things. They sort of cozy up to the Indian subcontinent person and say, look, if you $20 more, and I'll fix it for you, that you can have the place. So the rent may be advertised at $100, but the subcontinent folks would pay 130, but because there's 20 of them there in the apartment, then they could do it. Also, there were properties that were illegal to rent. They were in that bad a state and condition. But again, peasants from third world countries will go, oh no, that's pretty good compared to where I come from. And so there was one. I remember in the media, it was reported in the media, which is very rare actually, and even less so today, where I think 16 Chinese people, again, in sort of rural peasants, 16 Chinese people were renting a derelict house. It was due to fall over, and it was designated for had to be pulled down and required major structural. And these people were renting and paying. Given the rent, it was top dollar. It was well beyond market price, assuming the house was even in good condition, which it wasn't. And and it was in a diabolical state. The last people who rented it had a lot of cats, which he urinated every place, stank. The carpet was rotting, and black mold everywhere, and water coming in here, and absolutely out of control. But they were paying because there were 16 of them, and they're all working as dishwashers and the like. Then working in Chinese restaurants and gardeners for the Chinese rich that were coming over and that sort of thing. They were able to pay a premium rent. So again, no local people would have rented that shithole. But there you go. So there's the poorer white people who's just one family at a time. They're being priced out of that market, because they don't live communally at 20 to a house or 20 to an apartment. So they can't afford to compete with that. It's meant to be illegal when you have that many people staying in a place. You only meant for a place like it, you meant like, I think 4 adults is a maximum that you're allowed to have or two adults per bedroom, or okay, I've got the ratio in front of me, but it's something in that order. There's limits on the amount of adults that can stay there or be there. And but the local governments and all these sort of people, they've obviously been instructed to just look the other way and pretend it's not happening. So what happens is that these people, subcontinent people, Chinese or elsewhere, from anywhere, it doesn't matter, they're able to crowd in and use a communal system of pooling their resources to pay above market rents, which then artificially pushes up the, if you like, the market price. But it's not. It's it's an artificial price. Now these people are able to do that with impunity, and all across Sydney. Now the federal government's amped up the immigration again. So we're talking about, and bear in mind, Australia only has a population of 25 million, but they're talking more than 200,000 immigrants, and that's before you count chain migration and any illegal arrivals, people who overstay visas and things like that. So we're talking a very major, a large amount of people coming into what isn't a large country from a population perspective. So they're coming in and placing, lots of additional pressure on the rental accommodation. Now, just to give you an idea, before COVID hit, and say a few months before, there was in Australia's biggest state, New South Wales, there was 50,000 properties for rent, or just shy of 50,000 properties for rent. Now today, as of last count, it's just under 20,000 properties for rent. This includes apartments and this is rental accommodation, private rental, not office, and that includes apartments, houses, the whole 9 yards, townhouses, condos, and everything else. So this is this is getting on for 60% decline over 3 years, and apartments closer to the city, the ones in bigger demand, it's not so bad as you get further out, but nonetheless, so even in a suburb. And there's a friend of mine mentioned this, even in a suburb that's 80 miles out of the downtown of Sydney, a place is up for rent, and you can still get 10 to 12 people will turn up to the inspection. Now, not all of those may be interested, or maybe some like it, some don't, that sort of stuff. But that's an incredible number of people for something that's in the far outer suburbs of the city. You would never get that sort of thing in the past, but that's how it is now. And there's a few other differences as well that are going on. A property owner will decide on a rent they want, and they won't budge. They want $100 a week, and that's what they're going to get. I'm using round numbers. The rent wouldn't be 100; it'd be a lot more than that. So they don't mind if the property's vacant for 3 months or 4. Don't care. $100 is what I want, and that's what I'm going to get. Now that never used to happen. So again, market forces aren't driving things, and owners, property owners, are looking at it as an investment situation rather than a market-driven commercial transaction. So this is causing artificial shortages again. Now there's a third, and I'll come back to the offshore investors here. They the ones that, the Chinese Communist Party general type thing that own hundreds upon hundreds of properties around the place. They've got portfolios worth gazillions, and they just want to keep those properties as investments. Again, they're just money laundering, so they kind of don't really care. And I'm just going to switch that off. So sorry, I thought I had the phone switched off there. So they've got these properties which are vacant. They leave them vacant, which again adds to the artificial shortage of properties. Now they should be heavily taxed for that, but let's assume they are being taxed. Then what they do is they just use fake labor importing scams to bring out Chinese peasants from wherever, and then they put them in these places as like temporary caretakers. All Chinese temporary caretakers, and so they pretend that the place isn't vacant, that it's actually got someone in it who's paying rent, and that's how they manage to get around it. But I just wanted to talk about the shortage of real estate. It's all artificial. None of it is driven by organic market forces. There's this artificial bringing out of vast numbers of people that are not needed by the economy, by the way, and then allowing offshore investors to buy up swathes of real estate and then put their peasant nominees in there that are pretending to be rent. So this is creating artificial shortages all over the place. And then, of course, the communal living that a lot of the folks from the third world do, where they'll as I say, have 20 people to a 2-bedroom apartment, which will then artificially inflate the rental price of those sort of properties. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.